Peace. Good evening, everybody. Give those of you some time to come in. Tonight, I wanted to take some time to discuss community building and some of the things that I've learned over time that could be a benefit to those of you who are also invested in community building or who want to be involved in community building as well. So, I was inspired to build about this tonight because I seen a few of my contacts on social media who were expressing their frustrations about collective work and responsibility. People coming together and advocating for a common cause, and them not getting the support that they would like to see in terms of projects, programs, and initiatives that will positively impact the lives of even the people that should have been participating. So, not only did I want to just offer some encouragement, but also to share some insights in how we can be more successful in those type of undertakings when it comes to building in community spaces. Um, One of the first things that I often think about when it comes to doing any type of community projects is that even if it starts off as an individual vision and something that you would like to do, that you have to consider its collective impact, meaning that it's not something that you're just doing for yourself, but it's something that ultimately should have a relationship and a positive impact on the lives of others. And I think sometimes people have an individual idea, and it may be difficult to get support because people can clearly see that it is just your idea. And I think that it's unfair to come to groups of people with a personal idea when they could be investing that time themselves in their own personal idea. And sometimes we may not get the support or the buy in because people can clearly see that this is nothing that really benefits a collective body of people, but it's just your own individual or personal idea. And sometimes people, you know, which is understandable, don't want to support your individual idea because it's nothing that really supports the collective. So that's something to always keep in mind, even if you have a vision or an idea about something that you want to do, that you have to be able to articulate its collective impact and to give ownership to others in a sense where they are a part or are invested in seeing the success of that vision being carried further. And if you don't get that type of buy in, then it's difficult to actually get some type of support because some people just don't connect or identify with taking ownership of that idea. So that's number one. If you have an idea, you have to make sure that that idea is shared with others, because that also enables the idea to have a sense of sustainability, because you have collective um, people invested in that idea. Then they also are going to want to see the longevity of that idea being carried out, because it's also a part of theirs. Even if you came up with the vision, you share ownership of that vision with others who also share that vision. So that's number one. The second thing that's important is making sure that that idea is realistic and obtainable. So, for example, I've met people who have this idea that they're going to be a double platinum selling artist, but when you ask them practically where's their album at, they don't even know how to access a recording studio. And so it doesn't mean that being a platinum selling artist is unobtainable, but from the place that that person is in right there, it's not really realistic. They should be able to focus on some of the short-term goals in order for them to use those as building blocks to reach the long-term goals. And that is something also that some of us have a habit of doing. We may have ideas that are not realistic just based upon where we're presently at. And we have to be honest about where we're presently at. If we're not gainfully employed and we don't even have a basic revenue stream in terms of us being uh, a person that goes to work every day and have the capacity to provide food, clothing, and shelter for our own person. And that's not even thinking about if we have children. If we're not even able to do that successfully and consistently for ourselves, then it may be very difficult to think about being able to build a legacy and other different opportunities outside of ourselves if we're having difficulty just taking care of the basics, right? So making sure that our ideas are realistic and obtainable is also vitally important in terms of community building. You don't want to go to a group of people with an idea that is so far fetched for them. It's going to be very difficult for them to be able to connect in terms of seeing the reality of that idea coming into fruition. So you have to be honest with where you are and what you have the capacity to do before you're able to approach others with what your capacity is, because that's what you're going to be invested in. If one thing I always do is, if I go to like a mechanic or I go to a store where a person is selling phones or cars, and they're striving to sell me a certain type of vehicle or a car, I ask them what kind of vehicle and car do they have. If this person is trying to sell me on how this phone is so spectacular and it has all of these different features, and as a business person, you're going to need it for this, that, and the third, and I ask them what type of phone they have, and they say, "Oh no, I got this one." I'm gonna think like, well, if it's so great, how come you don't got it? The same thing with a car dealership. If they're striving to tell me that this car is this, that, and the third, and man, it's wonderful and everything else, and then I ask them what kind of car that they have, and mechanic is driving the car of the competitors, I don't know. I don't really trust that, you know? So the same logic applies to us representing our ideas. If we are invested in youth advocacy and we're talking about how important it is for our youth to have access to certain resources and to be um, in a position where they have access to certain programs and initiatives, then we should be able to demonstrate that we're already invested in doing that. And it's even greater if we're invested in a volunteer aspect of the things that we're talking about. We can't be sitting here talking about, yeah, the babies are the greatest and the youth that and the third, and we don't have no evidence of us working with youth on a consistent basis. We're not supporting any type of programs, projects, or initiatives in our community, either with our sweat equity or even financially. We're not doing any of that, but yet we're striving to convince people about how important the youth are. That's contradictory and it doesn't work. So if we're going to represent an idea, then we should be the ambassadors of that idea. Because if we're not, then we're going to be like people who are actually out here already trying to sell you on something that they don't even have their heart into. The same way if you go to a place that's selling phones and they're trying to sell you a phone that they don't even have, or you go to a mechanic and they're striving to sell you a car, or the car dealership that's striving to sell you a car that they don't even drive. Right? So that's, the second point that is vitally important. Also, with our ideas and the work that we're striving to do in the community, specificity is vitally important. Vitally important. Specificity is being specific and detailed about what it is that we're striving to do. There's nothing worse than being in a place where you don't know what it is, whether that's in business or whether that's in relationships, right? You need to know what it is. And if you can clearly define and be specific about what it is, then it's easier for you to be able to communicate that idea and to gain that support of others who are clear on what it is that you're striving to do. So, for example, instead of saying, we want to do something for the youth in our community, that's so damn ambiguous and broad. I mean, what does that actually mean? And it's so ambiguous and broad, even if people wanted to assist you, they don't even know what it is that they can actually do. So saying we want to support, or we need to support the youth in our community is very different than the specificity of saying we would like to do a back to school drive for Abbott Elementary School on August 24th, 3 weeks before the new school year starts. And the type of supplies that we're looking for are book bags. We're looking for writing utensils, paper, any of those various different things that we have on this supply list from the school for parents who don't have access to these type of supplies and who are struggling with striving to get these resources together for their children before they start the school year. We're going to have it on this day between these hours. Now that is much more specific, and it gives people more of an opportunity to know how they can be involved and invested in that, because specificity is vitally important. Not only in terms of sharing those ideas with people, but specificity is also important in terms of ourselves. A lot of times we may not be specific enough. We say that we want this dream girl or this dream guy, and they're a dream, all right, but not the type of dream that we expected, because we weren't specific enough about what it is that we wanted. She might look good, but she may not have any kind of work ethic or be ambitious about anything in life. He may be strong and over 6 feet tall, but his legs look like mosquitoes. Or he's not involved in his children's life. So it's a lot of different things that go into manifestations and the importance of being specific about the things that we're striving to do, not only with ourselves, but also what we're striving to communicate to others. So the more specific that we are, the more we have an opportunity of not only being clear, but also clearing a path for prosperity as well as manifestations, and the type of support that we're striving to gain from our community members when it comes to putting together a certain project, program, and initiative. Um, the fourth thing that's important is, and it builds on that idea of specificity, is being very specific about setting actual goals and creating a timeline. I tell people all the time, one day is not a date on a calendar. So saying you're going to do something one day or, you know, another time, well, those aren't days on a calendar. And it's important to be able to set dates and times for our goals, because it makes it even more realistic, going back to what I said initially about things being obtainable. It forces you to really assess where you are. If you wanted to invest $2,000 in a certain type of program or a training or an initiative that you wanted to do in your community, and you know how much you make at your job every week, and you know what your expenses are in terms of food, clothing, and shelter, it gives you a good sense of how to set your goals based upon the type of financial support that you have by you working. So if you know you make a certain amount of money, it would be unrealistic to say that you're going to do something in a week and you know that you don't even have that in your bank account. We may set ourselves up for failure that way by not planning properly and setting obtainable goals by marking dates on our calendar, or putting dates on our calendar in our phone, but just making sure that setting those dates, it not only creates a sense of urgency, but it also lays things out in an obtainable way when it comes to achieving our goals. And if we say we're going to do something in 3 weeks from now, we have that date on the calendar, and we don't make that date, set another date. But at least you're literally working towards something, as opposed to just saying you're going to do something and there's no sense of urgency or expectation of when it's ever going to happen, because one day, again, is not a date on a calendar, right? And the dates that you set are for you. You don't want to set dates that are based upon the expectations of others, because their ideas may be unrealistic. I've seen people do this all the time. All the time. They get on social media and they talking about how they got a book and stuff coming out, right? Now, this person that's saying they got a book coming out, they may have not written one page. They don't even have a manuscript yet. But because they put that idea out there, now they're subject to the unreasonable expectations of everybody else. Some people may be looking at that social media post and expecting them to be sharing a book next week. And now you are subject to the expectations and the pressure of this person who thinks you're about to drop a book next week. You may have somebody else that thinks, oh, that book gonna be coming out in 3 years. You may have others who think that you ain't never gonna put no book out because you constantly post about what you're gonna do, and there's never any evidence of what it is that you actually do. But now your idea is subject to the gaze and the expectations of others, which most times are very unrealistic. So it puts you under a lot of unnecessary stress and pressure that you don't need to be under when you're setting a goal for yourself. Does that make sense? So the date that you set in terms of the goals that you set are for yourself. And that's nothing that you necessarily have to share with everybody. I mean, if you're gathering people together and you're working on a collaborative project, then it should be shared amongst the group members in terms of collective work and responsibility, but only amongst them who also share in the reasonable expectations of when this goal is set. If you set a date for this back to school drive, the people who are involved in it should know that date and should be solid in terms of this is a reasonable an obtainable goal to be able to do this by this particular date, right? So it's less about the talking that we're doing and more about the planning and the organizing and working towards a certain goal. Not telling people what we're going to do. Me personally, if you ever see me share something that I'm going to do, it's already done anyway. I'm just letting y'all know that I'm going to do it. And I just share it whenever I want to. But I do it in that way because my goals are not subject to the gaze or the expectations of outsiders. It's already done. I'm just really letting y'all know that sometime when I feel like it, I'm going to share it with y'all. And because I do things in that way, um, I am, I have less of a tendency and less of an opportunity to get distracted and sidetracked and everything else when it comes to what I'm actually doing. It's already done, so people, you can't undermine anything that I'm doing, right? And this kind of goes into my next point. Write down your ideas. Write down your ideas. I've known people who have had challenges with just organizing their days and focusing on achieving their goals. And one of the things that I encourage them to do is write those goals down, because now you've committed your word to a bond. And that is the next step of that bond becoming life. And, it's easy for ideas to just evaporate into the atmosphere, or we see people talking on social media all the time and their words just disappear, right? But when you write things down, you're committed to a certain degree of making sure that those ideas are made manifest because you've committed those ideas to paper. And you can visually see that idea, at least one dimensionally, two dimensionally, you can see that idea. But that's the next step or the next phase into seeing the three-dimensional manifestation of those particular ideas. So writing down your ideas and your goals um, is very important as well, and it helps you organize your thoughts. Also, additionally, when you're working with others and you're striving to get the support of your community, they need to see those ideas as well. They need to have something on paper that they can visually be able to look at. And that kinesthetic approach is also important in terms of accessing that particular part of your community that may be more orientated in terms of getting involved in things based upon what they can do with their hands. Some people are more visual learners and they can, see the things that you're sharing and learn that way. You have others who are more, they listen and that's how they learn. But then you have the kinesthetic learners, people that learn hands-on. So writing things down is also a good way of connecting with those people in your community who they need to see something on paper. They need to see a proposal or just ideas of what you plan to do, and it gives them more of a sense of confidence and a surety in terms of what it is that they're being invested in, because they also see that you put time and effort into committing your ideas to paper, or at least taking it from that abstract realm of consciousness and putting it into something that is creative, right? Um, Next point that's important is making sure that you share your ideas with people who have shown themselves to be supportive of those ideas, and not just sharing your ideas with any and everybody. One of the things that I've shared with people in the past is ideas are like newborn babies, right? And just like a newborn baby, it takes time for that child, that baby, to build its immunity against the various different elements in the atmosphere that can compromise the health and the wellness and the growth and development of that child. So it takes time for that child to develop that strength to be able to ward off those various different elements and to have that immunity to protect itself. Ideas are the exact same way. They're just as vulnerable, and you don't want to expose those ideas to any and everybody, because some of those people are like viruses, are like bacteria. And like a baby or all new ideas, they're very vulnerable to scrutiny, because you're just starting to think about things that you're striving to do. So they're not as strong or solid. They don't have the fortitude and the integrity yet. You're still building that because it's something new. And you have to be guarded in terms of making sure that you support the growth and development and building the immunity and the ability to withstand the attacks on that idea from people who are on the outside. Because keep in mind that that idea is a part of your vision. And sometimes people just simply don't have the vision to see as far as you. When I go to different communities and I see something that by some standards would look desolate, or you would see lack of business opportunities or poverty, I look at that as opportunity. The absence of all of those things to me is my evidence of opportunity. And with our ideas and having vision, sometimes people don't see what you see. And striving to share those ideas with some people, it may be equivalent to striving to get a transfusion that does not correlate with the type of body fluid that you have or the blood that you have. So by sharing certain ideas with some people, they're not able to contribute or add to your growth and development simply because they just cannot see it. So what are they going to say? If they can't see it, there's nothing that they could actually add on to that vision. Right? I had a discussion earlier today with the mayor of my city and the city administrator, and they were discussing some ideas that they had about some plans in the city. And I immediately could see it because I'm already working in that trajectory in terms of the type of work that I do, especially amongst our youth and within our communities. So some of the things that they were sharing with me, I was able to contribute to that immediately because I can already see that vision because I have a part of that vision myself with the things that I'm doing. Sometimes you may have an idea and you're striving to share with people, and they just don't know what to say. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're hating on you, right? Some people may interpret it as that, they hating and they don't like when I'm doing this, that, and third. No, some people just literally can't see it. It could be something just as simple as you're in a relationship and you're planning to get married, and you're sharing this idea with someone who has never been married, and they're not even considering that type of lifelong companionship. They can't see that. So you're sharing that idea with them, and you're all excited about, your plans for the future, and you have this event scheduled, and you're doing all of this, that, and the third, and they're just sitting there listening to you, and they're not really contributing any ideas to that conversation. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're just hating it, or they're just disappointed, or it could be that, but sometimes they just simply don't have the vision to contribute. And that can take the air out of your sails. You can feel, a little disappointed, discouraged, other different things. But the reality of it is it's important to be more cognizant and calculated in terms of who we share certain ideas with. If you're striving to accomplish a goal and you're speaking to someone who just doesn't really execute well, they really don't finish certain things, then, you got to ask yourself, why are you even sharing that idea with somebody that never follows through? You're not going to get any kind of advice or insight in terms of execution from this person, because that's not their strong suit. So you have to be very mindful of who you're sharing certain things with, because again, um, ideas are vulnerable and they're like children that you bring into this world, and you have to protect them, and you have to help build their immunity so that they're strong enough to be able to withstand the various different attacks on those ideas being manifested. And make no mistake about it, some people have a vested interest in certain ideas not being made manifest. You know, you think about stuff like a vehicle that runs off of water. People that are into big oil, they don't want to see nothing like that happen. You know, or you look at big pharma in the healthcare industry, and you see people creating serums or other different type of things that help promote holistic health and wellness of people, where they don't have to rely on, you know, pharmaceuticals or other different things or procedures. Big pharma and the medical profession and healthcare, they don't really want to see all of that, because it undermines their ability to do what they're doing. So again, you do have some elements in the society that would not like to see your idea being made manifest. They would not like to see certain type of community initiatives being made manifest, because it undermines or conflicts with what it is that you're striving to do, which is another reason why it's important to share your ideas only with those who share that vision and who are invested in collectively working to responsibly take ownership of that vision and to carry it further. So to build on that, the next thing that's important is to make sure that you connect and network with people and organizations that will help you fulfill the physical and mental health goals that will help sustain that idea. And that just goes into what I was saying about, you know, building your immunity. This is all really about sustainability and strategic partnerships, not only with people, but also with agencies and organizations that share that common vision is important to not only building that immunity, but helping that idea and that goal to be sustainable, because now you're having a collective body of people who take ownership of that idea. It's not just you singularly, you know, and this is much more stronger than just this, right? So in thinking about those type of strategic partnerships, when you are approaching agencies and organizations about the things that you're striving to do, it shouldn't be from the perspective of you have your hat in your hand and you're asking for something, right? It should be from the perspective of equality. You know, what it is that you have of value and what you are bringing to their agency or organization or to that community that is needed. And there's no ways around that. You know, you're letting it be known right up front that there's value in what it is that you represent and the things that you're sharing with others, and they have an opportunity to be a part of it. Because whether they want to be a part of it or not, you have already committed yourself to making that idea be manifest. You're going to do it if it takes you 10 years, because you're that committed to what it is that is in your heart. So that's important to keep in mind as well when you are striving to share your ideas with your community members, or you're striving to establish those strategic partnerships with agencies and organizations, that you're coming to them from the level of equality, and you're not asking for nothing. You're telling them what it is that you're doing. You're demonstrating to them how you've already invested in this, and you're giving them an opportunity to be a part of something that is amazing. So speaking to health, this is difficult, right? Being able to maintain a positive outlook. You know, you go through times where you could get discouraged, you could feel disappointed. You know, that's a part of the path, right? But at the same time, what's driving you inwardly, you know, not outwardly, but what drives you inwardly is enough that will allow you to be sustained in the process. And that is an important part of your mental health. Having that positive outlook. And when I say having a positive outlook, I'm not saying that you walk around trying to ignore what's negative and act like it ain't there. That's just as bad as just being negative. Because again, it goes all the way back to my initial point. Being realistic about what it is you're striving to do and realistic about the goals that you set for yourself. You have to consider some of the adversity. You have to consider the criticisms. And I'm not sitting there saying that you dwell on it or you read every comment on your posts or anything like that. I'm just saying you have to be conscious of the different adversity and the conflict or the other different things that are on the other side that may pose a problem to you being successful in your undertakings. One of the things that I always say is when you see a problem, and I don't care on what scale it is, it could be just a problem in a household, right? It could be a problem in a community. It could probably be a problem in a school or a school district. It could be a problem in terms of the local business community. It could be any kind of problem. The first thing that you have to ask yourself is who benefits from this problem? Who's going to get something out of this problem existing? Because when you could identify that, you also identify the primary the adversity or the conflict to you being able to manifest that idea. If you're striving to do community initiatives, or you're striving to do things for youth or the elders in your community, you have to think about, okay, who benefits from our youth or from our elders being in this condition and not having access to fresh fruits and vegetables, or not having access to transportation or other different resources? Who is benefiting from this? Because if you're going to go out there and put together some project programs and initiatives to address that, then you are going to be sure that this type of adversity is going to come out sometimes in full force to strive to undermine what it is you're striving to do. So having a positive mindset is not just, walking around with your head up in the clouds, right? And like I said, it could be just as bad or negative as having your head in the ground like an ostrich. Neither is good. The best place to have your head is right here, looking around you, being able to look above you, look beneath you, and everywhere else around you, but at the same time, keeping your eyes on your goal that you've set for yourself. So maintaining that positive outlook also means that you have to have support groups. You have to be able to connect with people who are able to share ideas that helps you keep that vision actualized. Because when you go through discouraging times or disappointments, sometimes your vision may not be as clear as it should be. It's just like fasting. For any of you who fasted before, you reach a certain point through your fast where your clarity is super sharp, right? Because a lot of your energy is not dedicated to the digestive process and to that particular body system because you're abstaining right now. So you go through a phase where you're light and sharp, and you have a buoyancy about yourself cognitively as well as physiologically that you usually don't have, when you're going according to your natural diet, right? So having that positive outlook or that support network, being able to build with people and to share ideas with people who share that vision is vitally important. You have people who do that negatively all the time. You know, you see them constantly arguing online or talking about people all the time or gossiping and doing all this other stuff. You have to do the total opposite. You know, you have to get with groups of people who are talking about ideas and actually putting finances together to do things, and that have things to share, that when you go to bed at night, when you reflect on your day, there's something that you learn from that person that you can quantify as a part of positive growth and development. And what I mean by that is, one of my habits that I have is at the end of every day, I can reflect back on my day and think of at least one thing that I've learned that day that has helped me grow. Because measuring your growth and development is oftentimes very difficult if you can't quantify it. And that's one simple way to be able to start quantifying your growth and development. You know, reflect on your day um, as you retire and just think about, what's something that I learned today? One thing. It could be anything, but something that you know now that has helped you grow, that makes you more resourceful as a human being when it comes to dealing with other members of the human family. Whereas somewhere down the line, if somebody needed that information or that access or that insight, it's something that you learn that day that you will be able to share with somebody else. We should be able to do that every single day. That's a way for us to actually quantify our growth and development. And now the last thing that I wanted to share is that when we're talking about our ideas and community building and getting people together to make things manifest, which positively impacts our community, that the idea that we're talking about is not the end all be all, right? Um, it's not a one and done thing. You know, it's a lifestyle, and it's something to think about in terms of considering that this is something that I'm going to do continuously, right? It may not be necessarily this specific idea that I'm going to continue, but it has to be something that we're contributing to this world or this society that is going to help bring more beauty to this world and not perpetuate the things that we see that are consistently broken. So it's not just about an idea and, you know, celebrating that you did something. You know, I see that all the time. Like, I rarely do like throwbacks and show people what I've done in the past, because to me it's like, yeah, I did that 10 years ago. I did that 5 years ago. I did that 5 months ago. But it was for the express purpose to be able to add on to the lives of others so that it can positively impact them, so that they can also be a vessel or a vehicle and a resource to other people. That's just what I do. And I've really had to teach myself to just stop for a minute and to celebrate some of the things that I do, because I rarely do that. You know, things that some people see me do that others may have never done in their lifetime. They look at me like, damn, you just doing that like it's nothing to you. And that's not what it is. It's just, I'm always striving to find more ways to express the infinite potential that is the essence of who I am, in order for me to continually contribute into this world, into this society. You know, to me, it's not about, oh, I'm just going to get this object and show people, look at the object that I have, or look at these objects that I'm wearing. Like, you know, to me, it's about, how can I do something to help people become better? I can see how it's helping me become better and improve my life. How can I put it in such a way where I can assist others in that same way? And that's just how I think. You know, I'm sure that there's other people that think that way as well. You know, so those are just some things that I wanted to share this evening. And right now, I'm gonna just open it up to those of y'all. If you have any questions related to what it is that I'm building about, that I could possibly answer for you um, at peace. What if you don't know how to plan, or if you need help organizing? Everybody knows how to plan. That's a myth. Everybody knows how to plan. Even a person that is a drug addict knows how to plan. And if they manage to get drugs and they're not employed, they manage to get drugs every single day, they plan that out. So everybody has a capacity of planning. The challenge is, how do you properly plan to achieve other different goals in your life? And one thing about addiction is people will always plan around those things that they really desire. And on a biochemical level, addiction is something that enables a person to plan their entire existence around in order to obtain whatever that particular substance is. So all of us have the ability to plan, you know. We have to figure out, what are we going to, how we're going to redirect the planning that we already have in order to achieve the type of goals that we want to achieve. Think about the type of adversity that we either set for ourselves or other different things that are around us that may potentially undermine our ability to accomplish those goals. And a lot of it goes back to what I said initially, being realistic about what is obtainable. A lot of times people set very unrealistic goals for themselves based upon where they're at. It doesn't mean that certain things can't happen. It just means that in order for them to happen, it may not be five months from now. It may be 4 years from now. If you're looking at it realistically, based upon where you're at, what your resources are, and your commitment to being able to reach those goals. So planning absolutely starts with being realistic about where you are and what you have. Now, in regards to you need help organizing, um, you have to ask yourself, what do you actually need in terms of how to organize? Some people's problem with being able to organize is that their living space is not even organized. And it may be difficult for you to organize an idea of being able to do something outside of that living space if we haven't invested enough time to at least organize our living space first. How do you keep motivated, and how do you keep motivated and consistent? It's all inward driven. I keep myself motivated, and I keep myself consistent because the things that I'm committed to is in my heart. I'm not doing this from my head. I'm not doing things that I do for notoriety, anything like that. It's inward driven. So it's not driven outwardly. A lot of people are motivated by outside factors. I see people that say stuff like they love for people to doubt them because that's their motivation to get it done. Or they love when people make them angry because that's their motivation to get it done and stuff like that. I don't operate like that. I could care less about who doubts me or who's angry or anything else like that. I don't do it to prove anything to those type of people anyway. I do things because I genuinely care about the human condition and helping people have access to resources that they could grow and develop and to be able to fully express their infinite potential. So me knowing that that is the essence of me, that is my driving force, my own infinite potential. To not set limitations on myself and to do whatever I literally put my mind to. So I don't need anything on the exterior to motivate me. We are endogenous. We're endogenous. I'm gonna put the word in the chat. We are endogenous. That's what most people oftentimes don't realize. What most people are familiar with is the word indigenous, which basically means you're native to a certain geographic location. That is your origin. So some people think that their origin is really outwardly manifested, that who they are is based upon the place where they are, whether that place is socioeconomically, whether that place is geographically, whether that place is nationality. They define themselves based upon outward circumstances, when in reality, we are endogenous, meaning our inward origin is where we come from. We are consciousness in the form. So that infinite potential that I've been speaking on during this live is the essence of who and what we are, consciousness in this form. That is the ultimate motivating factor when you realize that you are that infinite potential. But when a person doesn't really know that, they are motivated and moved by outside factors, which are limited aspects of who and what we are. You know, all of this is layers of that consciousness. And most people depend upon those layers to define the reality of who and what they are. You know, they think that they are who they are because of the job they have. That's their connection to their self-importance. Or because of the type of car that they bought and posted on Facebook. That's who they are. Or the type of $1,000 sneakers that they wear, or the other clothes that they got, or all of these exterior factors people use to define the reality of who they are. And when they disappear, a lot of times, I mean, some people take their lives because of that. Because the destructuring of the ego and the attachment to these things that people feel self-important about are no longer there. Now they're faced with the reality of what are they really? Who are you really? So you are the essence of that infinite potential, or that consciousness that animates this form. And that is what motivates me and keeps me consistent. I know the essence of who I am, and no one can take that away from me. Now, again, we live in a society where there are constant attacks on that nature of who and what we are. Everything around you is designed to teach us that we are other than ourselves. The foods that we're being fed makes us other than ourselves. The propaganda that we see online or on television is oftentimes teaching us to be other than ourselves. So there's not many things that really feeds our soul or really encourages us to identify the essence or the nature of who we are as that infinite potential or that consciousness in the form. There's no one really having that type of conversation. Because when you understand that, you operate from a totally different place. You operate from a totally different place. So, how do you view subconsciousness? Sub means below. So, in reality, hold on, my clock is going off. In reality, consciousness has no form. It has no shape or no vector. There is really no up or down or in and out to consciousness. It is. It permeates all things. But as a sentient being, our form, we conduct consciousness just like copper wire conducts electricity. So, in seeing the essence of consciousness as being without form, without shape, without vector, there's really no sub to that consciousness. The only way that you can really put that in context is if you're talking about a person that's not woke or that they're asleep. You know, they're below consciousness. They're just not conscious at all. You know, it's like a person in a walking coma. So that's one way of describing, um, people with who are dealing with being below consciousness. But in reality, there is no real sub or super or anything. To consciousness is consciousness. It's a word to describe the infinite all. All right. So, if I don't have any other questions, I just wanted to come on for a minute and just go through a few things in terms of just sharing with people some ideas about how to be successful in the undertakings, not only just individually, but how to connect with your community and to be successful in doing things collectively. Um, if you had other questions, I put my email in the chat. It's atlantisbuild@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions in regards to being involved in your community or just being successful in your undertakings, how to be able to bring your ideas to life. This is something that I've learned and I'm consistently learning how to be more effective and efficient at doing. And I've been, doing this for quite some time. So, I speak from experience. I speak from a resume of accomplishing a lot of various different projects, programs, and initiatives, and working with other people and ensuring that they're able to successfully accomplish their goals as well. Also, in the chat, I put my links to my Atlantis School for Gifted Youngsters renovation project. Um, Go to the website and check it out so that you got a little bit more information about what I'm actually doing here in my community. One of the projects is I'm starting an early childhood learning center. My background is in early childhood education. I currently work in the school district at an elementary school teaching youth. And my Atlanta School for Gifted Youngsters is a program which is a culmination of the various projects, programs, and initiatives that I've been doing for years, at least 2 decades, not only within my community, but also nationally as well as internationally. So, this project will be the central location of a lot of the things that I do. And they start with our youth in terms of early childhood education. I'm also going to be offering an after school program for youth as well. And the Atlanta School and for Gifted Youngsters works in conjunction with other different projects, programs, and initiatives that you would see in your own community. So it's not in competition or anything like that with other different projects, programs, and initiatives. I will be able to offer different resources to youth that traditionally are not available in public, private, or charter school models. So again, take some time to check it out before you support it, because again, I don't want you to just take my word for it and oh, I'm just going to support you. Nah, check it out so that you see what you're actually supporting. Because a lot of times you get people who come on here and they're scammers, straight up. There's no other way to put it. They're not gainfully employed. They're not really doing anything in their community at all. And they want you to take your hard earned finances to support what they're personally doing. And that's not fair and it's not right. You know, um, you should be willing to support something that also aligns with your vision and your goals in terms of what it is that you would be doing in that position, or things that you already do support when it comes to projects, programs, and initiatives like that. You know, and that you see the person that's doing it is coming from a genuine place when they're doing it. So, again, check it out before you support. Those of you who have supported and that will support, I appreciate that. I always keep people updated on all of the various different new things that I'm doing with my renovation project. And I appreciate all of y'all just tuning in and just hearing some of the things that I had to share this evening. And when I feel the need to come back on again, I'll do it again. So y'all have a beautiful night. Peace. And thank you.